I'm not part of the dark, simply deeper in the shadows. I'm deeper in than ever before, but that's not the dark side. I know what I'm doing. This was the lie that Quinlan Vos told himself, day after day as he slipped further into darkness at the height of the Clone Wars. Vos had always been among those Jedi who danced a little too close to the edge of the dark side, and during the Clone Wars, he went right off that edge. But while his fall to the dark side was obvious, there was more to it than outwardly apparent. Vos had been ordered to fall, and by the Jedi Council, no less. In this video, we'll be discussing the full story of Master Vos, his dubious allegiances, and his mission to find the Dark Lord of the Sith.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Quinlan Vos was a near-human Kifar who, like many members of his species, had the gift of psychometry, the ability to read the histories of objects he came into contact with. This, coupled with his powerful connection to the Force, made him a promising potential Jedi, and he was taken as a Padawan by Jedi Master Thuln. Though Vos, in the eyes of the Jedi Council, had a tendency for recklessness and often leaned close to the dark side, he eventually proved himself and became a Jedi Knight, and took his own Padawan, none other than Aayla Secura. Vos and Secura came to specialize in unorthodox missions, especially those involving undercover operations. During one mission gone wrong, Vos and Secura lost their memories thanks to a hefty dose of glitterstum spice, and both of them needed retraining as a result. During another mission, they battled Tyr and Bok, the last of the elite Morgukai warrior cult, killing Tyr and wounding Bok, Tyr's son. Their catalogue of pre-Clone Wars adventures is extensive and probably could use a video of its own, but for the purposes of this video, we're gonna fast forward to the beginning of the war in 22 BBY, after Aayla became a knight in her own right. Quinlan Vos, working with his old master Thuln, had spent the 2 years leading up to the Clone Wars building an extensive network of spies in the nascent Confederacy of Independent Systems. But as the first months of the war dragged on, this network began to fracture. Not only had Vos failed to catch any hint of what had been happening on Geonosis, but he had been compromised as well. One of his agents, Tokati, was keeping Count Dooku appraised of his operations. This allowed the Confederacy to feed Vos's spynet bad intel, leading to mass casualties in the Battle of Brental 4. But the final blow was dealt by the Jedi themselves. 5 months into the war, Jedi Master Ajan Kolar interrupted one of Vos's meetings on Nar Shaddaa and arrested him for treason. Kolar was led to believe that Vos's bad intel was deliberate and tried to take him in for questioning, but with the help of Colleen Hence, one of his agents, Vos managed to escape Kolar, kill Tokati, and get off Nar Shaddaa. This was according to plan, however, for the Jedi Council had set Kolar up to fail. Knowing the spynet was compromised, Vos, Thuln, and the Council had decided on a new course of action. The Council would make it look like Vos had defected, which would allow him to join the Confederacy's Dark Acolytes. Vos did exactly that, in the hopes it would enable him to get close to Count Dooku. After joining the Dark Acolytes, Vos traveled with Dooku to a number of flashpoints across the galaxy. Together with Acolytes Sora Bulk, Kadrian Say, and Tol Skor, Vos bore witness to a side of Count Dooku he hadn't expected from a Sith Lord, a merciful one. Aboard a captured vessel above Drongar, Dooku ordered several captured Jedi to be spared, deeming their deaths unnecessary. On Tiburon, he deposed a brutally oppressive loyalist dictator. These events began to plant seeds of doubt in Vos, who started to wonder whether or not the war was much more morally grey than he previously thought. Dooku and the Acolytes went next to Vos's home planet of Kifu, where they tried to convince Tinte Vos, Quinlan's great aunt and the ruler of the planet, to side with the Confederacy. When she refused, Dooku ordered Kadrian Say to kill her, but Vos intervened and killed Say. As Vos fled deeper into the palace with his aunt, Dooku alone pursued and swiftly defeated the rogue Jedi. But Dooku didn't kill Vos. Instead, he told him he didn't know what he was protecting, and on Dooku's urging, Vos used his psychometric powers to read his great aunt's mind. What he found sent him into a blood rage. Long ago, Tinte had allowed Anzati to murder his parents, desiring to gain custody of him as a potential heir. Vos butchered Tinte, and Dooku welcomed him back into the Dark Acolytes, sensing this fall was more than just an act. Though Vos continued to deny it himself, this time he had indeed fallen to the dark side, something that became apparent over his next few missions. As he grappled with fellow acolyte Tol's score for Dooku's favor, he started to become vindictive toward his rival. When Dooku began sending him on assassination missions, he complied, murdering Senator Viento and Kairos Fen. In this manner, he gained Dooku's favor, but these acts also drove him deeper into the shadows, as he put it, and they stained his hands with blood. He only realized how far he had fallen on a mission to Honaga, where Aayla Secura, his former Padawan, prevented him from obtaining the black box of a crashed Separatist bioweapons ship. He nearly killed Aayla, and the realization that came with this gave him second thoughts. Vos left the Dark Acolytes following the Battle of Honaga, and Dooku had Asajj Ventress and Tol Score hunt him down. They tracked him to the Taitavian 4, a derelict science vessel. There, Vos ran into Obi-Wan Kenobi, an old friend of his who had come to investigate the vessel's disappearance. Ventress quickly became fixated on Kenobi while Score tried to kill Vos, and the two former friends were forced to work together. Vos told Kenobi he was abandoning the Confederacy, and though Kenobi didn't trust him at first, Vos ultimately played a crucial role in their escape and thus regained Kenobi's trust. He was brought before the Jedi Council and at length was allowed to return to the Order, as it was believed his actions proved he had avoided falling to the dark side. But after leaving the council meeting, Vos discreetly sent a quick message to Colleen Hence, his partner in crime. She was to tell Dooku his plan was working. Vos, secretly, was working as a sort of triple agent. During his time in Dooku's service, he had become obsessed with finding out the identity of the Count's master, the second Sith, in hopes that finding and killing them would allow the Jedi to end the war. That was why he had allowed himself to fall so far, and it was why he continued to maintain ties to Dooku. The Count led him on, knowing of his obsession and using it to manipulate the Maverick Jedi. Vos continued to discreetly do work for Dooku, though he still, outwardly, was a Jedi. For the sake of his cover, his work as a Jedi came first, however, and so, in the war's final month, he found himself leading clones on the front lines of the Siege of Saleucami. The 5-month-long Siege of Saleucami was fought between the Grand Army of the Republic and the Morgukai Shadow Army, a separatist clone army. These were clones of none other than Bok, the last of the Morgukai, who had been defeated by Vos and Secura in an early mission a decade prior, but obviously not slain. The Morgukai clones were extremely dangerous. They were far stronger than any human, they were relentless and unstable, and they had been trained in both Bok's Morgukai styles and the combat forms of the Anzati. These techniques and natural attributes combined with their cortosis weaponry made even the basic foot soldiers of the Shadow Army capable of going head to head with Jedi. Only two things allowed the Jedi to keep up the siege: Jedi Master Oppo Rencesis and his battle meditation, and Thuln, who was inside the Morgukai base causing as much damage as he could. As the siege dragged on, Vos's espionage continued. He came to the conclusion that the second Sith was Sora Bulk, who served as the leader of the Dark Acolytes. Through Colleen and Tol Score, he eventually worked out a meeting with Bulk during which he intended to kill the Dark Jedi. While inside the Morgukai base, Vos sought out Thuln, who he tried to recruit for his cause. He was unable to sway him, however, and in anger, he attacked Thuln, apparently killing him. To make matters worse, as he did so, Sora Bulk managed to slip behind Republic lines and assassinate Oppo Rencesis. The siege was coming apart. Vos returned just as the Jedi discovered Rencesis' body. Vos, using his psychometric abilities, was able to read the dead Jedi Master's mind and came up with a plan based on what he had visualized. The Republic was to throw all of its forces into the fray in an all-out attack, while a small team infiltrated the base to destroy its internal shield generator. Without the shields, Republic Star Destroyers in orbit would be able to blow the base to hell. Vos and Aayla Secura volunteered for the infiltration mission, and as the last battle of Saleucami began, they slipped into the compound and began planting charges. As Secura finished up, however, Vos slipped off to the command center, interrupting a meeting between Dooku, Sora Bulk, and Bok. He told them what the Republic's plans were and where Secura was, hoping it would give him the trust he needed to be able to kill Bulk. However, as Bok went out to kill Secura, Dooku demanded a final show of loyalty. He was to kill Colleen Hence, but Vos refused. He freed Colleen, declared himself a Jedi, and was joined by Thuln, who, as it turned out, had faked his death. As battle commenced in the command center, Sakura, who wasn't where Vos said she was, detonated the explosives, causing lava to begin flooding the complex. As Tholm fought Sora Bulk and Vos fought Score, Sakura reached the command center to find that Bulk had activated an energy gate to keep her out. She also found that Bok was waiting for her, eager to avenge his father's death and his own humiliation. As battle commenced between them, bodies began to fall in the control center. Colleen finished off the Enzati assassins and Vos killed Score by hurling him into the rising lava. Bulk defeated Tholm, but Vos saved his master at the last minute. As Tholm slowly recovered in a corner, Vos and Bulk, who were the last two standing, began a furious duel. At length, Sakura was able to defeat Bok by hurling him into the energy gate, but she was still unable to get through to the control center. As Dooku's hologram goaded Vos on, urging him to give in to the dark side, the battle in the control chamber became fiercer. Inside Vos's heart, another battle was being fought in parallel to his battle with Sora Bulk, a battle with his inner darkness. Sakura sensed the turmoil in her master's mind, however, and through the Force, reached out to him, interrupting his internal battle. She showed him that, behind all his faults, he still had the heart of a Jedi. In the depths of Vos's heart, his inner darkness lunged in for the kill, and in the control center on Saleucami, Sora Bulk did the same. But Vos spun around and took advantage of the break in his enemy's guard. As Quinlan Vos struck down his inner demons, he also struck down Sora Bulk. In short order, the Battle of Saleucami was won. Now sure of himself once more, Quinlan Vos prepared to move his troops to Boz Pity, from which they would redeploy to Kashyyyk. As he parted with Sakura and Tholm, however, he made a surprise announcement. He would be leaving the Jedi Order after the Clone Wars. This wasn't for lack of conviction, however. When he probed Colleen's mind in the command center, he had discovered that she was pregnant with his child. So that was our tale of Quinlan Vos and his dance with the dark side. But what do you think? Would you like to hear more of Vos's story? What happened to him during Order 66 perhaps? Let us know all this and more in the comment section below. And just before you click off to the next suggested video, guys, I have a massive announcement to make. Our revitalized Geetsly's gaming network is now up and running. It's running on a beautiful map. The staff team have worked really hard on it, and I'm glad to have put my full trust into them. So make sure you guys check that out. All the necessary information for that is in the description below. And if you want to check out our all new history channel, The Braved, where we take a look at all the badasses of history, that's in the description too, as well as our Relax Jack music channel, our Geetsly's Discord, and our Patreon. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.